can see us now?
Yeah, people can see you now.
Can they hear us?
I don't think so, but I'm gonna check right now.
They can see you and hear you.
Do you need me to help?
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll show you what you're gonna do. Yeah, they can hear you too.
oh, good. Hello.
Hello?
Okay.
Piggy?
Alright, we fixed it.
I don't like hearing my voice.
Yeah.
All right, there you go, guys. Thank you so much for coming in for the fall book club. So we are now going to start. Thank you so much for typing in the chat about our audio issues. I thought we were going to escape unscathed for the technical difficulties, but we're not quite that lucky yet. We'll have it down eventually. I'm so happy to see everybody in the chat. Really glad you guys can be here. We are going to start off by introducing. We have Ren right here. Wave at everybody. He's a cool dude. Wonderful cartoonist and a beautiful coffee barista. And we have Brooke down here in the panel below us. Wonderful. She's so great. She's studying forensic psychology, and she currently works at a law firm, which sounds cooler than it actually is.
Definitely.
And then we have my buddy Alexander, which you guys haven't seen, right to the caddy corner of me. He's one of my fellow workers. I work with him as a theater technician, and he's a really cool cat. And we're gonna have him. Riley is sick, so she won't be with us today. Luckily, Alexander is a cool dude, and he's filling in for us. So unfortunately, we won't be able to address chat very often. We'll be reading through it periodically and addressing certain really interesting chat contributions, but other than that, we won't be able to talk to you guys very much. So don't have Twitch, Waldoa, Bandit, and Chris. Welcome in. Thank you so much, guys. We are going to be covering today chapters 5 through 8. So without delay, crack open your hymnals and we will get crack-a-lackin'. Today we're going to start with some summarizations, and we'll start with a summarization of chapter 5, I guess. So who feels most confident to summarize chapter 5?
Do we need to do like a catch-up, like here's chapters 1 through 4?
We can do that too, if you guys feel like that's
new viewers.
Yeah, we'll try and just get better and better at doing the summarizations for the whole book all the way up to this point.
Okay.
Which I did not properly prepare for, but I can try and start the summarization. Let me pull up these notes real quick. So chapter 1, the beginning of the book. This is chaos and exploration. The characters are called to adventure. Everyone just wakes up on an island and they figure out that it is uninhabited. The one adult that was on the plane is dead. All of these boys are choir boys and Boy Scouts from Britain. Right now it is on the verge of the beginning of the Second World War. Chaos is ensuing back home on the home front for Britain, and they decide to try and make some order out of all of this chaos. They decide to do some more stuff. So what else can somebody add to that for chapter 1?
Let's see. Ralph is the leader of the group. He was elected chief by all the other boys. But he has a conflict with another boy named Jack, the leader of the choir boys, and Jack loves hunting, and he challenges Ralph a lot for leadership. And one of Ralph's close friends, I guess, if you could even call him that, is Piggy, a little fat boy.
I wouldn't say his friend. It's more he's just kind of looking out for him.
Yeah,
he just kind of lurks behind Ralph and just says things, and Ralph is always like, okay, whatever, fatty.
And initially, he does not like Piggy at all, but it does seem like he defends him more often as the story progresses. Yeah. But Piggy is kind of useless. He often has he stands up for good ideas and stuff, but as far as the physical side of things, helping to do anything on the island, Piggy's pretty useless, and he can't see without his glasses. He's Velma from Scooby-Doo, basically.
He's blind as a damn bat.
And now his glasses, where we last left off, are broken, so he can only see out of one eye now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're
Ralph-
running to characters right now, right? So
Yeah.
we'll do
Yeah.
a bit of character recap as well, so that everybody can see exactly what these characters look like. I went in and did some other images, which are going to be pretty cool, and we'll see if we can get them in here real quick. We'll get rid of that real quick. We're going to cover Piggy. So this is Piggy.
Oh my god, he looks like Newman.
Yeah,
from
so
Seinfeld.
these are some really nice illustrations.
Hello, Ralph.
Hello. Ralph.
Yeah, he's just a little fat kid. I like that they
What's
put
he holding?
He looks
the
like
Conch.
he's
Holding
40 years
huge.
old.
the Conch. Yes. So tell us in the chat how you guys pronounce the word conch. Do you guys say conch or do you say conch? Or maybe something different, because I've had some arguments with people about how to pronounce that thing that is in Piggy's hands.
I looked up 4 different videos that do the pronunciation of it.
There was
of
one
them
really
says
good one.
conch, 2 of them say conch, and the 4th one is just a guy making noise with his mouth,
Yeah.
like crackling noise. And it's just a stupid, funny one.
Yeah, so we have no idea how to pronounce it.
Dude, I've never met anyone that says conch.
Don't have Twitch says it's a shell.
Just say shell.
It's just
Be
a
safe.
shell.
Yeah.
Bandit says you pronounce it coochie. Coochie. I have the coochie.
Jeez.
So this is Piggy. I like in this image that they decided to put on him some like wayfarers, which is cool. Because usually when they depict Piggy, it's with the round glasses. But
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this is kind of more of what I imagined.
yeah, and I think
Kind
that's
of a mix between this and more of like a rounded look.
yeah, and I like that one. This so far is my favorite depiction of Piggy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they have the shorts on him and everything like that, and his whole uniform and stuff. So we also mentioned Ralph. So we are very quickly introduced because the 2 characters that begin in chapter 1 is Piggy and Ralph.
Yes.
They wake up really close to each other, and so we start the story off with Piggy, and we'll move from Piggy into Ralph.
Nice.
So this again, I feel like is a more accurate depiction
Yeah.
Than what we saw last time.
of what the book says Ralph looks like.
Definitely.
Whose artwork is this?
This is
Credit the artist.
yeah, we do.
Credit the artist.
I will look it up. But they were free, so don't worry about it. I'm not stealing these.
Sure.
That's what they all say.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's Ralph, and he's just like
That's the chief, the leader.
yeah, he's the chief. I'm pretty sure that he's gonna be the good guy throughout the whole story. But we'll see. I mean, we're into chapter 8, and I still feel like
Yeah.
he's a good guy.
I think last time early on, I was really expecting him to
You
slowly
said he was gonna be
turn
like
against-
the antagonist.
yeah, turn against Piggy and really start siding more, like folding under pressure and siding more with Jack, the actual antagonist of the story.
Mhm.
So it's nice that I was pleasantly surprised that he actually is a decent dude.
I think
Yeah.
out of all the characters, he's the one that exhibits kind of the most struggle
Yeah.
Yeah.
because he's kind of torn between Piggy and Jack, both tearing him in different directions. But
Yeah.
he still has to be the central leader and the rock that everybody has to focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are definitely times where he struggles with like kind of giving in to that more savage side, as
Yeah.
we saw at some point in these last 4 chapters when they go hunting and stuff, and he really starts to understand the thrill of the hunt with Jack and the kind of the bloodlust of it.
Yeah, so that's Ralph. He's a good guy. And then we're gonna move from Ralph into the other character here that we will do, and this is gonna be Jack
Oh my
Meridew.
God.
All right.
I think they went I don't think they took a really weird design for his paint. I imagined
Is
his
it paint or blood?
I don't know. I
Probably
feel like
with Jack, it's blood.
if it was
'cause he's
blood, it
always
would
like-
probably be black by now.
That's
Oh
gotta
yeah,
be-
probably.
I don't know what it would be.
I don't know.
He also has really nice lines on that paint, so
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
It's kind of a professional job there.
yeah.
He's hiring someone out in the wilderness.
Well, and then there's blood on the end of his staff, and it's a little redder. So either the stuff on his body has already started to get kind of...
Maybe some berries.
Or-
Maybe he
or-
found some berries and
Yeah.
he wasted them to rub them all over his
I just
nipples.
kind of imagine mud. Like they're just putting
That's what
mud
I
and
was
dirt
in,
on
or like
themselves,
clay
right?
or something on the
'Cause
bank
I
of
think
like
it's
a river.
black, maybe like burnt wood and like...
Yeah.
Oh,
Stuff
could
like
they be
that.
using
Ash.
ash? Yeah.
Because he does say it's black at one point when he smears it from like his ear to his jaw.
Yeah, and I think there's at least 3 colors in the paint that he puts on his face.
Yeah, it's more camouflage type, sounds like. But anyway, this is pretty accurate for how the character is described as far as like presenting him as kind of a savage hunter. But there's him, and then do we have any illustrations for any of the others?
We have illustrations for almost all of the other characters that we haven't run into yet. So when we discuss them, we'll cover them. But yeah, this is Jack. In the movie, he had like blonde hair. They made Ralph have brown hair, and this is basically really close to what Jack looks like, just looking like a damn ginger.
I did
That's
notice
really
in
mean.
the book it starts describing his hair as sandy, and then like that it's a lot lighter than it was when they first
Yeah,
got
probably
on the
because like
island.
the sun and stuff.
Yeah, so I was like, maybe that's why in the movie they gave him blonder hair.
But then why did Ralph have brown hair?
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So these are the characters so far for our chapter 1 through 4 summarization. But we will now go on with chapter 2. So chapter 1 ends pretty much with everybody deciding that the Conch is how they're gonna speak to one another. They form a hunter group.
Mm-hmm.
They elect Ralph as chief. Ralph
Whoever
decides
has the shell, the conch.
whoever has the shell, the conch, the conch, the coochie.
Has the right to speak over everyone else.
That's right. And so that's basically chapter 1. Chapter 2, they attempt to do a bunch of stuff, but end up catching the whole jungle on fire.
Yeah, Ralph
Yeah.
is really concerned with starting a fire so that they can signal for help with the smoke. And Jack pretty immediately is more concerned with hunting and showing that he's not a coward or something. You know, it's kind of how it starts initially, and then he really just has a bloodlust for hunting after that.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly painted as the villain early on.
Yeah. And Ralph is also concerned with gathering all the kids, because there are like the Littluns are the group of like 6 and under kids.
Littluns!
So he's trying to like keep everybody together and be sort of an adult in a situation where he's only 12 years old, and that's as old as they are on the island.
Yeah. So, Don't Have Twitch brought up a question that says, surely someone would notice a plane didn't arrive to its destination. This is something that we mentioned last session, which was that the only explanation that we could come up with for the fact that someone would be looking for them and the plane's like their track of destination, they would find them pretty quickly, I feel like, because if they're like, oh, well, it was going to this destination, which means they were taking this flight path. It's chaos back home. So they think that maybe they just count it off as like, well, we have more important things to do, like, you know, like fight a world war.
Did we decide they're flying from some other place back to Britain, right?
Right.
So, yeah, who knows how many people, like other Brits, even know that they left that destination and are headed home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, it's chaos there. So maybe everybody who knows that they left this place, they're dead now. So
Mhm.
the plane crashes and nobody nobody is left to care.
In addition to that, I think that it's also plausible, really easy to take care of that. It's a non-starter. It's a non-plot hole because the answer to that is, oh well, they just had to divert from their initial path and didn't tell anyone about their diversion, and then they were so far from their main path that everybody knew about that now they're just lost and no one knows where they could be because there's too much space.
Yeah.
So chapter 2, what else happens in chapter 2? They immediately start to turn into savages by chapter 2. We have the myth of the beastie introduced here. There are children that supposedly see a beast, and rumor starts spreading and fear starts welling up in the Littluns especially. This is when Piggy gets to try and like show everybody how smart he is by like posing important questions like what happened to the little kid with the pomegranate scar on his face.
Yeah, there's like
the
a
birthmark.
little boy who's like a 5 or 6 year old with a birthmark on his face.
Yeah.
We mentioned the
goes
Littluns. We can show you the Littluns real quick.
Ooh, we got Littluns.
We do have Littluns. So you can even see the pomegranate
That's
birth.
the one that's crying Percival because
That's
he's
gotta be
never.
him.
That's
not
gotta be Percival.
crying.
So yeah, the little boy in the purple shorts and no shirt, with the red splotch on his face. That kid went missing during the big giant jungle fire that they started with their signal fire, and he's been gone, and we still haven't found him for 8 chapters, and so he definitely burned alive.
Yeah.
He roasted like a burnt chicken nugget. So weep for him. So these are what the little kids are. And how old do you think the Littluns are so far?
They're probably like
I
6.
think it says 6 and under, right?
6 and under?
Is it 6 and under?
Or
I
like
thought it was just around 6.
Around 6, yeah, like
Because I don't think
kindergartners.
there's any like 4-year-olds.
Kindergartners,
or anything.
first graders. About.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're pretty young, and the Littluns end up throughout the whole story just trying to throw off a lot of the responsibility of like surviving, and
Because they're little
They're
kids.
awesome.
yeah, because they're little children,
children.
and so basically what they end up doing for the majority of the book is running around and like playing in the springs or building sandcastles on the beach, or like staying by the fire during nighttime because it's warm and lights things up so they don't have to be scared of the dark.
And even to a certain degree, like displaying more savage instincts, like some of the older boys, not necessarily on that level, but like playing with little crabs or bugs in the sand and like controlling their path and everything, and just kind of really enjoying this power that they have over little helpless creatures,
Yeah.
and throwing rocks at each other, and not because they can't get into trouble anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kicking sand in each other's eyes.
they added the precursor for those kids where they just like have all of these, their id is just going crazy because they just have all
Yeah.
these different instinctual things that they want to indulge in, and there's
Yeah.
no parents around to constrain them, and so they just start like killing little tiny insects, and you're like, yeah, I love the control that I can exercise over these things in their life.
And
So
they use, I guess, I don't know if it's important to note or not, but they use Piggy's glasses, the glass, to start a fire so that they can signal home.
yeah, that's notable, that because they anytime that they want to start a fire, they need Piggy's glasses.
Yeah.
And I don't know at what point they ended up pushing Piggy over.
I think that was in chapter 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They-
So they end the chapter
Jack
2.
punched him though.
Yeah, chapter 2
He
ends
did.
with Piggy posing the question, "Where did the pomegranate stained face boy go?" And Ralph is just like, because no one wants to like talk about the fact that he just burned alive. That's end of chapter
Yeah.
2.
But it does kind of come back to haunt him later a little bit, where he can't think about it because he doesn't know what it'll do to his psyche, basically, just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah. So we'll move on to chapter 3.
Huts on the beach.
Huts on the beach. What happened in chapter 3?
That was all about them building shelters, and
Once again, yeah.
Ralph and Simon were really the only ones doing anything, and Ralph is pretty mad at everyone else that they're not sharing responsibility for creating shelters. He's like, you haven't even caught a pig
Ooh, do we have
yet."
Simon? Okay, we just talked about Simon. Let's see.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this is Simon. They do mention only a few times, and it's especially in chapter 8, I believe, that he's brown-skinned and dark-haired. And this is actually a depiction of the scene that ends chapter 8,
Yeah.
I believe. Although I don't feel like this specific imagery really communicates the vibrations of that scene, because that was a very intense scene. I'm
Yeah.
excited to get to that later
Yeah.
tonight. But this is Simon. He's a little boy. He doesn't say much. He's very quiet in temperament.
Simon's kind of a weirdo. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He likes to like go wandering around in the forest at night and like.
Yeah, he's got
like,
like his
"Oh,
own
I
little
like-
meadow
I
that he
like
lies
watching."
down in, and just kind of. He's a loner.
Yeah.
I don't know. He comes across like he could be a serial killer or something, or
Well, yeah.
he's just a friendly, quiet kid.
And they
I don't-
recognize that several times, especially in the following chapters we'll be covering today, the main ones. That, and I think it was in the 8th or 7th that either Piggy or Ralph tells Simon, he's like, well, what do you think? Why do you think I'm gonna live? And he's like, well, it's because you're batty, Simon, because you're straight batty. And I guess that's like he's just crazy, he's going mad or whatever.
Simon. Well, I guess it's not till the later I guess we can get into it in a bit.
Yeah.
Once we get to those chapters.
So this is Simon. He's quiet. He walks around. He does weird shit, and he seems like he seems morally neutral so far. He hasn't really done anything. He doesn't have like a dedicated like loyalty to anyone. We see a divide at some point in the story take place between Ralph and Jack, and allegiance, and different kids have to decide who they're going to go with as far as leadership. And Simon somehow manages to maintain a neutral Switzerland status with both of them, despite being physically with one. Because I think he goes off with Jack at some point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he can just like interchangeably go between groups. It seems like because whenever Simon talks to
Jack at all?
I don't.
yeah,
think
that's how
he
this scene
does.
ended up happening, because he went off.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
thought
think
he
he
was
goes
just
to, like,
wandering
follow
off
them.
alone.
Yeah.
I think.
Or he happens upon them
Yeah,
Right.
he's
but
Okay.
he doesn't
weird.
go to join them.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that no one's mean to Simon. Like, Jack doesn't seem to be overly mean to Simon.
Yeah, Simon kind of goes unnoticed in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, where he is.
Did
able
he
to just
watch
slip away.
them cut off the pig's head and put
I
it on
believe
the
so.
spike?
That's
So
that's
he's
part
just
of
like
the.
crouching in the bushes.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
So chapter 3 was huts on the beach. Ralph is trying to get everybody to build shelter, and he's having a heck of a time organizing these little kids. And Jack, meanwhile, the other like potential leader of these kids, is no help because he just wants to hunt and kill stuff.
Yeah.
And then chapter 4,
Chapter
painted faces and long hair.
What happens in chapter 4? Painted faces, long hair. This is when the time jump occurs.
Yes.
There's a long time jump, at least 3 or 4 months, because
Something like that.
almost all of the kids' hair grows out to such a point that it's in their eyes and whatnot, and so that's an important thing, because for
Piggy, who's still got his
Piggy
cut somehow.
Piggy still has a half-inch haircut this
Man,
whole
he found
time.
like a razor in the plane. He's like keeping it all to himself.
They talk about it like the fur on a little deer's antlers, and how like it's
like a
eventually just gonna
stag's
fall out.
antlers. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got early onset male pattern baldness.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's
Yes,
just a bald 12-year-old.
Early onset.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
He's basically like Bobby Hill with glasses.
yeah, exactly. He's like Bobby Hill.
This chapter really gets into Jack hunting a lot, and when he first attempts it, he does not. He hesitates and does not kill this pig that's trapped in some weeds when he has the chance. The pig gets away, and he really like. Oh, what's the word? I mean, he just kind of takes it to heart a little bit, where he's not gonna mess up again,
Yeah.
and so. Yeah, he goes out and really he kills a pig.
Man, he really,
Yeah,
when he
super proud
loses
of
it, he loses it hard because he didn't just like go out and kill a pig like in just a normal way and be like, oh, I need to do this to survive. He's
Yeah.
like slitting its throat and like making up a song about it, and he's like
which is what we
showing
get into
everyone the
with
blood
chapter
on
8,
his
I think.
hands.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like, ha ha,
Yeah.
flicking blood at
It's
people.
really where the divide of priorities starts to come into play. Is that, you know, Jack is reverting to that survival nature that I've got to kill to eat to provide for everyone,
Yeah.
and Ralph and the others are thinking more towards we need to get rescued, and that's what their focus is on, the fire.
But I feel like he's doing it more to prove something to himself, like
Who,
his
Jack or Ralph?
Jack.
Yeah.
Whenever he kills that pig, because I mean, like, they're all. It said later in the chapters that we read this time that they had been eating fish and like crab and stuff, but he's like hard set on catching all these pigs and catching the biggest one. He wants to be the one to do it.
I think it initially starts that way, but I think once he really gives in, that's just his like instinctual urge to go hunt.
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't have an interest in anything else other than hunting and killing stuff.
Yeah. I don't think he really even cares about rescue at that point, because even
No,
whenever they bring up the fire going out, he's like, but I killed a pig, guys.
Exactly. He doesn't care about the fire at
Yeah,
all.
and even later in the chapters that we're going to talk about later, he's like, he doesn't really care about any of their society or anything like that anymore.
So
Hey yo, we'll take a small break here to recognize Small Brent TV. Thank you so much for rating. I really appreciate that. Your raid is great. Welcome everybody. This is the Fall Book Club. I am a small armadillo. My real name is Maverick, and we're here talking about a book. TV, thank you so much for the subscription. You are subscribed for 8 months. That's awesome, man. Congratulations for being part of the a print raid, a book. Oh, small print TV, small print TV, books. It all makes sense. Print raid. Welcome, Sleazy Jesus. Yeah,
That's
glad to have you guys
the
here.
best name.
So yeah, we're gonna continue with the talk on it.
So I guess now we're reaching the point where we're starting what we read over this past week, chapters 5 through 8.
Yeah, we're doing summarization right now for the last chapter 1 through 4, which is what we covered most recently, and then we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes of chapter 5 through 8. So yeah, we were just talking about Ralph versus Jack, and one of the things I wanted to mention about those two characters, because they seem to be the ones that are like butting heads right now. Jack is the antagonist, Ralph is the protagonist from what we can tell.
Yeah.
And the reason, like, the cool thing about these characters is that it's a triad, really. We seem to be leaving Piggy out of all of this, but he's a very important character as far as all of these are concerned, because Piggy, I feel like if we put it into Freudian terms, Piggy is the superego. He's trying to make all the best decisions that can possibly be made, and he generally makes the best decision. Generally. And then,
but does not always communicate it in the best way.
right, he just can't communicate it the best way, right?
Yeah.
And then,
But he's like the supervisor.
right. And then Ralph is like, he's still trying to make good decisions, but who knows if it's going to happen or not.
Yeah.
And he's probably the ego, and then Jack is just the id.
The clear id.
He's just looking to have a fun time. I think that's
Yeah.
mostly what he says is, I want to have a fun time. We're gonna go kill stuff. We're gonna go like freaking slit throats and shit, and like it's just, we're like, gosh, Jack, really take it easy, man.
You could totally understand the appeal to a group of like 12 and under kids, but
Yeah.
Like, that's where the balance is, I think, between those three characters, is that Jack is very unbalanced in one way, which is that he's going toward, like, indulgence all the way. Piggy isn't indulging enough.
Yes.
Like, he's very neurotic. He needs to try and, like, take some risks every once in a while. And Ralph is what balances everything out. He's in the middle. We see him still just like Jack wanted to try and, like, kill something, right? And at some point he even takes like some pride in you know, stabbing a hog a little bit, and you know, he has some confidence about that and feels good.
Yeah.
But also still wants to get off the damn island. And so, you know, we can have both. We can do both of those
I think
things.
you could more or less picture Piggy and Jack as like the angel and demon on Ralph's shoulders,
Yeah.
Yes.
each
Yeah.
whispering to pull him in one way
Ralph
or the other.
is like the neutral character, and they're like Conch in the Emperor's New Groove,
Yes.
where he
Oh my
has the
God.
angel and devil, and he's just thinking about doing.
Yeah. Perfect. I love it.
So let's see. Chapter 5 is Beast from Water. And I feel like this chapter has a lot to do with that conflict between Jack and Ralph. Having like a big meeting and just discussing everything, and really kind of touching on this fear that so many of these kids still seem to have, that there is some sort of beast in the forest around them on the island. And the older kids don't really believe that this thing exists, but they are forced to like go on a search for it, basically, to alleviate the fears of these little kids.
Yeah. And that's like one of the whole things that no one knows how to make any sense of it too, because Piggy and like a few other kids have taken a firm stance that life is science, right?
Yeah.
And that there's no reason to be afraid of it, and they're trying to work this whole problem out in their heads about like, well, it can exist, but it couldn't do this, and they're working out like the physics of it and the science of it, and then they get into philosophy too, and they're like,
Yeah.
what is fear? But we don't need to fear anything, and it's like everyone is just scared, and they're
Like,
trying.
how
Yeah.
can it leave no tracks, and
Yeah.
it lives
Is
in
that-
the ocean or something potentially.
Where does chapter 5 end? What does it end with? I don't have my book with me.
Let's find out real
But I know that's the chapter where fear is definitely taking a strong position as a theme in this book, because they're very terrified
it ends
of it.
after the meeting just kind of falls apart,
Yeah.
because the kids are saying that, like, one of them at least is talking about the idea that this thing comes from the
Yeah,
water,
he says it
which is
comes
why
from
it's
the sea.
Beast from Water. That's the name of the title. And it ends though with, I guess, like at the start, Ralph, it really seems to kind of be holding this meeting together, but then it really falls apart with
yeah.
Jack like protesting against it and not really caring about anything that could possibly get them saved or anything. And at the end, it's Percival, the little 6-year-old boy.
Oh, yeah,
and
where he has
he's
his
crying.
break. Yeah.
He's crying, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is where everyone snaps. Like, this is just the
Yeah.
breaking point for everything that's been set up. I mentioned Chris. Thank you for the host. I mentioned last week about my thoughts on Ralph's decision to give Jack an entire hunting team. He gives the choir boys over to Jack, pretty much under his control to just like go and hunt things, and I was like, that's not a good idea. I feel like that's gonna be turning
yeah,
out.
he's giving him like all of the
Yeah, he's
force
just giving him all
on
of the
island.
physical force, which like in these survival scenarios, especially with like children, it's just gonna degrade into physical violence almost immediately. So I was like,
Yes.
that's not gonna turn out well, and this is where we see it. This is where we have like this whole thing to where they attempted to start up through direct democracy, some kind of leadership role, like a republic. They voted in somebody, and now the chief is going to tell them what to do. And then Jack says, well, why? What if we decide that you're
Yeah.
not a good chief? Then what do we do now? And then that just comes to a screeching halt. It's like, we don't need to use the conch anymore to talk. Like, that's ridiculous. And then people start disrespecting the laws that were put in place by everybody, and those break down. They have one kid to try and get out of him, like, what did you see? Was it a beast? Was it a beast? And then he just breaks, and everything's
Breaks out
chaos
crying,
again.
Yeah.
Nothing's
He
working
just
well.
calls them
Is
all a
that-
bunch of crybabies. And
is
they're
that-
worthless.
Is it Percival that is the one that they are questioning about it?
I think it's Percival,
I think so.
because he's crying in the photos. So
Yeah.
Well, they questioned the kid that first brought it up, and then Percival comes up later,
Okay.
and that's when they talk about it coming from the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's weird that Percival's middle name is Wemyss.
I like that he says his full name and like
Percival Wemyss Madison
And he
of
keeps
the
saying
Vicarage,
telephone.
Harcourt, St. Anthony.
Like,
And then he can't
He was
think of his
having a
telephone number.
stroke.
He's just giving all of his information.
yeah. Well,
starts
because I
giving
think
like his
that makes
social-
sense. Because I'm sure that like his parents like drilled him with that info. You know, like I'm sure his mom, his mum sat him down.
His mummy.
His mum sat him. His mummy sat him down and was like making him like say all of these numbers and information. Like, where do you live? What is our home phone?
So
How do you
when they
contact
arrive
us?
in the plane or something.
Exactly, that he would be able
Probably.
to say it, and like I'm sure that the only way he could remember all of it is in one long string.
He has to say it
You know,
all
he
together.
has to say it all
Yeah.
at once. So if you ask him for his number, you're gonna get his address.
So yeah, that's pretty much chapter 5 right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
chapter 6, we move from beast from water to beast from air. Is chapter
Is that
6.
the guy
Yeah.
is like flying a plane and I guess he blows up.
Yeah, I don't know if
Gets
his
out
plane
in the
just gets shot
parachute.
down or what.
Yeah, I
but
think his plane gets shot down and
It's-
then he parachutes down and dies immediately. I don't know if
I
he was
think he
dead in
might
the
be
air.
dead. Yeah, dead in the air.
I think, yeah, he dies after
How'd
it's
he
shot,
pull
and
out
then
his
he just
parachute?
like falls down to the island.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
But he, I think it's funny too, because in the towards the end of chapter 5, Ralph is talking about if only they could send us something grown up, a sign or something.
Yikes! He got
And, like,
got a grown up, but they're
Yeah.
not alive.
There was a lot of foreshadowing in chapter 5. I thought.
Yeah.
It's like
what foreshadowing did you
It
notice?
starts out. It's interesting because it starts out. Ralph is really feeling the weight of his responsibility and his role, and there's something he says. I think.
Because I'm sometimes I'm oblivious to foreshadowing unless it's so blatant. It's like slapping you in the face.
Yeah.
He said he found himself understanding the wearisomeness of this life, where every path was an improvisation, and a considerable part of one's waking life was spent watching one's feet. So I thought that was like a good representation of how he's now thrust into adulthood, responsibility, having to take care of the Littluns and everyone else on the island, and trying to keep the peace, because now he's going into this big meeting where he has to reestablish all the rules. And then the foreshadowing comes like later on with Simon. They're talking about the beast, and Simon poses the question, and it's like, what if we collectively are the beast, because we're
Ooh.
devolving from
Yeah.
civilization and morality.
Yeah. That was a huge insight. When I read that, I was like, oh damn, Piggy's tapping into like the deep shit right now.
Oh,
because he was like he's just because he's trying to he had trouble finding words for it too.
Yeah, you
Piggy
can't
did.
think of like that it's
The way
a
to
mental.
Yeah, he just had
situation.
this immense intuition, and he was trying to explain it to everybody. He's like, what if it's not
I
like
think what it symbolizes is just primal fear. That's what the beast is. They're lost out in the wilderness without any adults. They're scared, and it's just kind of this primal fear that's keeping them going a little bit and like preoccupying their minds.
Yeah, it's like I felt like it was further than primal, which is like Piggy's the only one that has like more civilized intuitions and instincts, and everyone else is just running off of like fear of snakes, you know. And like Piggy has this heightened, you know, this he was given this intimation, this fear of, he's like, what if it's not just the animals or a beast, like what if it's people?
Yeah, what if it's
Like
us?
he's starting to realize that
And he's
maybe
insightful.
we should be kind of scared of what we're capable of. We need to rein ourselves in
what
here.
will become on this island.
Yeah, and he just wasn't able to voice that at all. So I do think that was pretty good. And like Alexander was saying, that like Ralph was having a hard time with the fact that like the majority of your life on this island is spent looking at your feet, because you can't do anything when you walk but look at them, because you don't want to step on something that would hurt you or trip or roll your ankle, because that would mean death. And there's no, essentially that just means there's no time to relax.
Yeah.
You know, and that this is all getting very wearisome because I have to lead people, and this is a huge responsibility, and people have already died, you know, with me elected as chief. Like the first decision that I made resulted in someone's death.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that that's weighing on him quite a bit.
So yeah, chapter 6 starts with the parachuting man, and when his body lands, I guess because the parachute is attached to him, the wind is making him kind of rock back and forth, so it looks like he's nodding or something.
Did he get caught on like some trees or something?
Yeah.
And that's why it's like he's like
so I think the way
swaying?
that I had a pretty vivid image whenever I read it. I felt like I had a good understanding of it. So he got shot down from the sky, this pilot. And I'm assuming he's like a war pilot, like he's some kind of like
I
a
would
fighting
assume
dog.
So.
And he gets shot down or whatever. And whenever he comes down, he ejects from his plane, I guess, comes down in his parachute, but I guess he sustained damage from the explosion that killed him. He lands in some trees or something, and he's pretty much hanging there. And he still has his parachute attached. And then anytime there's no wind, he is just like face down, his head is in between his knees, and he's like sitting down basically. And then anytime that the wind fills his parachute up, it pulls those cables taut and it makes him sit up as if he's looking out over.
Yeah.
I imagine pretty much the same thing, but I thought when he lands all the way on the ground. He's like resting against a rock sort of, but his parachute being caught somehow is like just rocking his body a little bit.
Maybe.
Because I think when they come across his body,
don't they like see it from like a distance though? Because I don't know if they come
it's
right
like a
on
short
it.
distance, and I think it's
Because they couldn't tell
dark.
that he was a person.
That was one thing I had trouble
I think
keeping
it was
track
like-
of, is what time of day a lot of this stuff was happening.
It's weird. It's like they're tending to the fire, and then they notice it, or notice him, and then they get scared and go back to the camp, but they try to wake Ralph up, so you'd think it'd be nighttime, but then it says something about daylight, so...
Well, when they first go and try and look for the beast that Sam and Eric said they saw, I think it's like the afternoon or something, and then whenever they get to the mountain, it's about to be night, and they're like, let's just go and look up there anyway to relight the fire.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell what time it was.
Yeah, I think that at some point also there, maybe more than once, there takes place like, it seems like a time change, but it's not. They've just been up that long. Like I feel like they've been up from like night until morning at one point, and that's slightly confusing because they're going along doing stuff, and then all of a sudden they're like, and now the sun is coming up and illuminating everything.
Yeah.
So that was like passage of time in this book. I feel like again is just really hard to grasp.
Yeah.
From time to time, some of the settings are difficult to grasp. It hasn't been too terribly confusing. It's not like we're reading like some like time traveling science fiction book. Like
Shout out to H.G. Wells.
yo.
Yeah.
Like it's not like we're trying to read. Is there an Inception novel? Because that would be wretched.
Man.
The novelization of
The
Inception.
novelization. Do they? First of all, do they do? Because I've seen like novel versions of the film, like to where they have a film first and then they translate the film into a book.
Yeah.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's like just so they can flesh out the story a little bit more.
Like, who would become the author? Like the guy who wrote the script?
Sometimes it's like someone else hired to do it, and a lot of times it can deviate quite a bit from the story of the whatever was in the movie too. Like maybe they get a first draft of the script and they work from that, so that by the time the movie actually comes out, it doesn't bear a whole lot of resemblance to it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of cases of stuff like that.
That's what I would do.
And other ones where they establish like connections between characters that are never spoken in the movie,
Yeah.
so it's kind of up for debate whether it's
But sometimes it's pretty cool
True to the
whenever
movie,
they
yeah.
adapt something into like a bigger story. Didn't they do that with Star Wars, they made the movies first, and then they did the comic books, and they fleshed out the story more.
I think
Wasn't that the order of it?
Well, I think with that, it was like the original movie was being written. They wrote comics based on that.
Yeah.
So some of the character depictions are not at all true.
It's a lot of like fan-made content.
Yeah. And then the
And
second
then they
movie
made
wasn't
some of
coming
it
out
canon.
yet. So they they continued the stories of the
Well,
comics.
yeah,
that
he
just
thought he
get
was only
real
going to make the
bonkers.
first movie.
But I know, like, with some of the prequel movies, the book came out before the movies, so a lot of people knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Anyway, it just kind of depends from movie to movie.
Yeah.
I was always wondering about that because I was like, I don't know if you already made the movie, and it's like always to
Yeah.
movies that are like, did we really want a book of that?
What's funny too
Like-
is when it's a movie based on a book, and then there's a novelization of the movie, so it becomes a book again.
When does
That's
that
what
happen?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what's weird. Like they
Yeah.
make the movie and then they make a book of the movie after the movie was made, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't even think I even want to watch that movie once more. Like, let alone read the book. You know. Anyway, okay. So where are we? Where did we leave off from? Chapter 6. Is that where we're at?
I think we just
Middle of 6.
finished?
The middle
Sort
of
of.
6.
Oh.
So
I was trying to look for when they come across the man's body.
They come across it in chapter 7 because they're still looking for him at the end of chapter 6, I think.
Is it before or after they hunt the pig that Ralph throws a spear at?
It's after, so they're going towards the mountain,
Okay,
and
because
then
Simon
they throw the spear.
tells Ralph, like, good luck. There's kind of a moment between Simon and Ralph where they kind of acknowledge that they are, like, becoming friends.
Mhm.
Yeah.
More so than Ralph and Piggy ever have been.
Oh, yeah.
Because they, like, smile at each other and just kind of...
yeah, they have some
just-
pretty
they have
heartwarming
a-
moments between one another, and
Yeah, it's
I think
mostly,
there's
like, unspoken, I guess, but it's...
there's
yeah,
even
it's
some
like,
spoken stuff that takes place between
"You'll
Simon
make
and
it
Ralph.
back." And
Yeah,
Ralph's
exactly,
Like, I don't
yeah.
know, man. I'm kind of nervous. What if I run into the beast? And he's like, even so, you'll make it back.
Yeah, I think, and he basically tells Simon, he's like, yeah, you're only saying that because you're crazy, you're batty, so that's why you think that. And that, I feel like that's definitely some blatant foreshadowing, which makes me kind of sad because I feel like that is kind of the mentality. Like for some reasons, I feel like Simon has something. He's in touch with something more. I feel like he has a bit of an understanding about how things are going to turn out because he does have some feeling about what's going to happen to Ralph.
So,
Because he talks about it like he's not going to make it. He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm probably going to die here, but you're going to make it. You know, like kind of without saying that.
Yeah.
Like, so I feel like if I had to make a prediction, I would say that if anyone's going to survive, it's going to be our good old protagonist Ralph. So,
Interesting.
or like I don't know, like maybe.
So if you had to pick some characters that you think are for sure going to not survive until the end of the book, since I have read the entire thing,
I'm
who
gonna
do
go
you
ahead
think is
and
going to
make
bite
a
the
wild
dust?
guess and say Piggy's probably gonna die at some point.
Why do you
Yeah,
think
I'm
that?
scared for Piggy, bro.
He's just useless, and I feel like everybody else around them is growing more and more savage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of the one thing you always hear about this book, which doesn't really get into specifics or anything, but they call it the pig hunt. And I know there's already been a lot of that throughout the book, but I feel like that is something that's going to happen, and it probably centers around them turning on Piggy.
Well, at one point I was really scared because when they were talking about like these different pig hunts, and they're like they went through some physical altercation, like some horseplay with Simon, maybe, and they like pushed him down, and then they started acting like they were murdering him.
No, that was
it was
Roger.
yeah.
That was Roger. Okay, we
Yeah,
mentioned.
they're like acting like they're slitting his throat and stuff. I thought they were actually.
Yeah, it says like Jack brings the knife down, and then right after that, it's like
They all
"Man, you guys
laughed.
hurt, like, that hurt my rump," or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah."
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was scared because they were like they had this like really devious, violent, euphoric moment where they were just having this horseplay with Roger, and then afterward they were like, yeah, you know what? We maybe we should do a dance, and we should like chant, and there should be like a fire.
Yeah,
And then they're like, yeah, we can just pretend that I'm the pig. And Roger's like, no, you need a real pig. We need a real pig for this, for it to be real or whatever. And I was like, what is happening right now? It's getting so weird. I'm like, they're like possessed or something. I was like, this is not okay.
Yeah, man. Chapters 7 and 8 get strange, especially like the last part of chapter 8, where like Simon is being possessed by this pig head. He's like, whoa, he's like hypnotized by it. It's like speaking to him.
To the point where he like faints.
Yeah.
Or blacks. He just like passes out.
He sees
from-
himself
It's
like in
weird.
the pig's mouth and then
Yeah.
passes out.
So this is going to be Roger. This is what Roger looks like.
Interesting.
He's clearly on board with Jack.
Yeah.
He has some very unique camouflage going on. It's really not even camouflage. It just looks like tribal paint.
Yeah.
You know.
For whatever reason, I thought Roger was younger than Ralph and Jack.
No, Roger's one
Yeah, I
of
thought that too.
the big kids.
Yeah, he's a biggin.
Huh.
They call
Yeah,
him
there's
biggins.
only like a couple of them.
I thought
Yeah.
he was like the eldest of the Littluns or something, but maybe that's somebody else, like Henry.
No, I think
He
the
sounds
I
like
think the biggins.
Robert.
Everybody that makes up the biggins is gonna be Roger, Simon, Jack, Piggy,
All the people with Jack
and then Sam
are
and Eric.
big kids. Are Sam and Eric Littluns? Or are they
No, I think
big
they're
kids?
they're like choir boys, aren't they?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
they?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're hunters.
So
choir boys.
Roger, in addition to Jack, is like he's also going psychotic pretty much. He seems to have very similar.
He's like his right hand man.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he's Jack's right hand goon.
And
He's-
probably Maurice too, because they're both of the ones that painted themselves and went to the camp to steal the fire.
Yeah.
And they're
So
like the goons that are like, the chief has spoken, and then they run off.
so this is Roger, and then we mentioned Sam and Eric, which they refer to interchangeably. So they merge their names together a lot,
Yeah.
to where they're not even separated. So that's Roger, and then we'll move on from Roger to Sam and Eric. These are these boys. Clearly, very soon after the crash, because they're still looking good.
I was gonna say they don't quite look as
Yeah, I feel like they would have been.
Animalistic
Stay
yet.
style.
yeah.
I feel like they would have been a little dirty right after the crash, anyways.
I kind of imagined them a little dumber looking almost because
Yeah.
they do just like have such a singular mind between the two of them.
They have a hive.
Mhm.
Just imagine them kind of like I don't know, Neanderthal-ish.
Yeah, I don't know either. I imagine them being pretty short too, but they don't look too short because they're part of the biggins, I think, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So these kids are twins, and as it turns out, with twins they look identical.
No way.
And part of that, they start and finish each other's sentences flawlessly, almost like flawlessly, like as if they're the exact same person. It's very creepy.
Well, they like count them as one person, and they even have like an argument about that later.
Right,
Whenever they're
so-
saying tending the fire, and they're like, we should give them 2 separate shifts because they're 2 different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're like-
Anytime.
Whatever.
Anytime that they have one of them has hold of the conch to speak, they both have the right to speak,
Yeah.
because they don't distinguish between the two of them.
They're the same person.
In addition, they had, whenever the airplane was shot down, they both missed that whole event because they were sleeping, because they were supposed to be taking turns on the fire shift, and one was supposed to be sleeping and one was supposed to be awake and alternate, because that's how that works. If you want to stay up all night, you have to alternate the shifts.
Yeah.
And since they're the exact same person, they both went to sleep at the same time.
Yeah.
And missed it. And so
Do you think the author's trying to say something there where they slowly just kind of become one, like, obedient personality towards Jack almost? I don't know. I was trying to decide if there was some sort of, like, allegory there, or
are they in
just-
service to
Maybe.
Jack?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they
They
pretty much do
join Jack.
whatever he says. I guess, do they stay behind at first with Ralph
I don't.
whenever Jack splits off?
I think once the divide happens, they go off after him.
They go off with Jack
Yeah.
immediately?
I don't think immediately. I think everyone was kind of meandering about, but I think eventually. they
Because I
went.
kind of remember thinking, like, oh, I'm surprised those two didn't go off with Jack, since they're, like, his
I don't know.
collectively his number 2.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question though, and I'll have to, like, as I continue reading, think about what Sam and Eric are,
I think,
because they're not that way for no reason.
yeah.
It could just be a trope,
That
Yeah, I
they're
was
just
like, is he
blind
just trying to make them, like, a
followers?
memorable character?
or not a trope, a
Or is
cliche.
he-
Tropes are better than cliches. They
Yeah.
could just be a cliche, but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I think they have a lot of potential to be a trope, and that their meaning in, like, unison, complete unity.
I think this, like, discussion about them really does kind of highlight my problems with this author, that so many, like, of these characters and descriptions of the island itself and the characters are so unclear.
Mhm.
Like, we're debating which characters are big kids and which ones are little ones,
Right.
and, like, where they're going and who they're siding with in certain scenarios, and it's just like a lot of it is very unclear, or maybe just like
Yeah. I feel like they didn't even specify who went with Jack whenever people are running off to go and join him.
They
It's just like
didn't-
whenever you see Jack later and certain people talk, you're like, oh, so I guess they're with him too. And then it'll say someone else is with him suddenly, and you're like, when did this person get here?
or maybe just like I think certain things just need repeating, and he doesn't. It's like one little line or something, and you're just supposed to know, like, what a character is doing and where they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
if you
that's
forget, then it's just like
That's fine, but I mean, and repeating can be good, especially if you're spanning different books. This is all one book,
yeah.
and his descriptions, just to start off with, are not the best. They're very short, they're vague, and you miss them if you're not paying attention.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of these kids, I have a hard time telling, like, who they are. Like, oh, Roger, what has he done so far in this story? I
Yeah.
don't quite remember.
Right, and they haven't done a lot. Like, there are several different biggins that haven't had a lot of like time to, like, do anything. Like, it's not until, like, chapter 8 that we really even realize that Simon is a good character.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have a lot of stuff to do
Yeah.
until chapter 8. Roger hasn't had anything until, like, chapter 7.
But they also have characters that they act like you should know about, and I'm like, I don't, like, there's this character, I think his name is Robert, and I don't remember where he was
Yeah.
even introduced.
Yeah, I don't
He
know.
like
either.
throws out a lot of these names and just like very brief, maybe dialogue or descriptions
Yeah,
of them,
expects
and then
you
you
to
don't
know
hear
who they
them
are.
from them for like 2 or 3 chapters,
And then
you're
suddenly
like,
you're just like, oh, this Henry is back. What did he do?
Which one is he?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, Percival cried. I know that. So.
Yeah,
I
maybe,
know
and
Percival
maybe
cries.
and maybe we're speaking too soon. Maybe, you know, it's him doing a small introduction, and then he took some notes from Tchaikovsky, and he's not gonna put the rifle on the wall without using it, you know, in the second act.
No.
But
It's just bad the entire time. And the dialogue was still, whenever we talked about the dialogue where they just throw out line after line and don't specify who's saying it. And there was one chapter where it was like the entire page was this dialogue that I had no idea who was even talking.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
I
was
even
just
went
looking at that
back
page,
and
I
I
think.
couldn't figure it out still.
I think that's part of the point, is that he's trying to convey the chaos of just they're all speaking over each other.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's, I think on page 108 of my copy here, there's just a lot of, like, dialogue, and it's really hard to tell who's talking.
I know whenever they all talk at meetings and stuff and they're all just throwing out things, and it is supposed to be like hectic or chaotic, but whenever two characters are like having a conversation and you're like unsure of who's saying what, because like the conversation they had on the mountain where they were like, are you scared? And then they were like going through that, I was like, which one of them is scared?
Yes.
And then they say later that Ralph was the
Because
one that
it's
wanted
like-
to stay.
Yeah, it's like both Ralph and Jack that are trying not to look like a coward in that
Yeah,
situation.
so
So
I
they
was
both
like-
have like almost the same motivation as
Yeah.
characters. So it's like, dude, you got to put like said Ralph or something at the end of some of this. It's just, it is frustrating, I think, as a
Yeah.
reader. But there are some things he does that I do really like. Like at the beginning of chapter 7, you know, it goes into the whole which chapter is it where the guy, is it chapter 6 where the person parachutes down?
It's
Yeah.
7.
Yeah,
It's
that's
6.
Oh, is it 6?
Okay.
Yeah,
6. Sam and Eric are taking care of the fire, and they would see him.
yeah.
And they mistake him for the beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
And they run back and tell everybody.
yeah, and I think it's an interesting decision on the author's part to let the readers know that it is just a body of a person. It's not a beast at all.
Yeah.
And then so he doesn't hold that as like a surprise or anything for the people reading it, like, oh, it turns out it's just a body of a person. It's just like, you know, that these kids are being like letting their primal fear and their
imaginations run
irrationality-
wild.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good at conveying like people's fear and stuff like that, and how they're it's getting more chaotic there and more of a mess, and they're losing more of their morality, and especially in the ending chapters, I feel like they do a good job of that, but we're not on.
Yeah, well, we're going to get, as we get into chapter 7 and 8, we really start seeing some stuff that was seeded in like chapter 2 and 3,
Yeah.
which was these like archaic practices, the disintegration of the little bit of civil society that was left in them to begin with, and then we see them like start trying to do all kinds of crazy tribal crap that's insane. Like they just started like, yeah, we gotta have a ritual now.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, we're gonna paint ourselves, we need these sticks, we're gonna have to make a chant, we're gonna have to dance around a fire. And then we have this bright idea from Jack after the whole boar hunting situation. So at what point do we get to that?
That's in chapter
I think it's an
7.
8.
In 8?
Where they're
Is it 7 or
hunting
8?
the
I guess it like
Okay.
there's 2 instances of it. There's in chapter 7 before they go come across the body of the man, and then there's chapter 8 where they actually do.
So 8 is where they
go and
find
kill.
all the pigs laying out, and they're like
sneak up on them.
spearing them.
It does say at the beginning of chapter 6 that the guy, when he lands, he does land among the blue flowers. So I guess he's not like actually dangling in a tree or anything. He's just on the ground.
Yeah, but still like.
But yeah, I think it's funny when they finally they hike the mountain and decide like, we've got to figure out. They're trying to narrow down where this beast could possibly be like sleeping or something, where it hangs out on the island. And they've been all over the island, so now they're just getting to these last few points, and they're going to the top of the mountain, which is weird that they go look in the sea first. You would think that Sam and Eric would have been like, no, we saw it right here.
Yeah, they
and
thought the beast came out of the sea, so I think they're like covering all their bases.
Gotcha.
And they're like, maybe this is like its lair.
Yeah. I would just think like, go to where they saw it and then see if there's like a trail or something that you can follow down to where it went.
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
they were like, there's no footprints, and so it was like hovering. They were like, there's no way.
Yeah. So at the end of chapter 7 they come across it. They hike up the mountain, and it's Ralph and Jack together that go see it, or is it just Ralph who sees it by himself?
No, so it's Ralph, Jack, and
So first
Simon?
I think they go out searching.
Roger.
Yeah.
Roger. And
Yeah.
Roger and Jack go up the mountain, and Ralph is like, "Nah, I'm good. I'll stay back."
Yeah, Ralph stays back. Yeah, that's their first thing, and they don't find anything when they go out on that search.
But Ralph does go up.
Yeah, he
Just
goes
later on.
He goes up later, and then he even says that whenever Jack's like, "Oh man, he didn't even go up the mountain, loser."
Yeah,
And
they
Ralph's
find
like, "No, I went up later."
they find in that search like a little cave type place, right,
Yeah.
or like a plateau
That's
for
the first search.
Yeah.
For the when they look towards the
Mhm.
sea.
which I think is an important thing that we'll probably encounter later again.
Is that where Jack thinks his fort is gonna be? Or is that-
Yeah, that's where Jack
I think
made a
so.
comment about. He's like, "Wow, what a good place for a fort. I could put a fort down here,
Is
huh?"
that how he says it?
I don't know.
Oh,
Probably.
Maverick, your accents are just
Oh, thanks.
the best.
Oh, well, I'm doing a British play right now too. So
Really?
yeah,
Man.
yeah. I'm Captain Robert Falcon Scott.
Oh my.
Except he doesn't speak. He's a more Captain Robert Falcon Scott. It's more up.
It's a little
That's
more,
better.
Uppity.
Yeah, it doesn't have
Less
a piggy.
Cockney.
It doesn't have a piggy accent.
You can do it if it's like the more proper ones. It's
Yeah.
Cockney where you really start slipping
Yeah.
downhill fast.
Just gotta watch My Cocaine.
Yeah.
My cocaine.
Asbar.
My Cocaine.
Just say my cocaine. You'll say his name perfectly.
So yeah, at the end of chapter 7, they do come across the body of the man, but they don't see it clearly, so they do actually think it is a beast. Just says before them something like a great ape was sitting asleep with its head between its knees. Then the wind roared in the forest. There was confusion in the darkness, and the creature lifted its head, holding toward them the ruin of a face.
Oh
And
man, so they did see its face and they probably got shook because this is like a disintegrated man
Yeah, the ruin
that
of
just
a
Probably
face.
got,
rolled
So no
up.
wonder they
bloodied
think it's
up
like-
and dirt and whatever
Oh
else.
man, I bet
Yeah.
he looks rough.
Yeah, so I think I may have misunderstood this when I first read it, but going back over it since you read directly from the book, I feel like now it was just a perfect like timing. Like everything came together perfectly to convince these children that it's an actual monster, right?
Yeah.
Because it just so happened to be right on the ground, right, sitting in blue flowers, and his face is all gross and stuff and destroyed, doesn't even look like a human anymore, probably.
Do you think before the end of this book that they will realize that it is just a
Yeah.
dead body?
Yeah, I think definitely someone's gonna get close enough to it, because I mean, for the first time, it all happens perfectly to where like they come up to it and it's like lurched over, and then
It's
it pops up.
dark.
It pops up and scares everybody,
Yeah.
right? And everyone leaves immediately, probably, right? So so they leave. They don't stick around long enough to figure out that it's not chasing them.
I feel like a lot of irrationality will continue to grow from this, and
Mhm.
I think maybe by the end of the book someone will realize, but it'll be like too little too late.
Oh yeah, way too late. I agree. I definitely think that's what's gonna happen. This is gonna cause a lot of chaos, a lot of fear,
So
and probably some deaths.
probably some deaths, yeah. So that's Shadows and Tall Trees, chapter 7. And then chapter 8 is Gift for the Darkness.
So that's where they create the Lord of the Flies to appease.
They make the
beast.
tribute.
Yeah, their tribute.
We get a title drop.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's actually a thing in this book.
Oh yeah,
They
like
drop the title.
I love every time in anything that I watch or read,
It's always so
anytime
funny.
the title always gets said in it, I'm like, oh, hey, that's the title. That's like
Yeah.
the title of the story. That's cool.
I
Oh.
always think of that old Family Guy bit where Peter's sitting in the theater, like through all these movies, just going, whenever they say the title.
Yeah, that's me.
And then it gets to, in order to beat them, I must become Superman 4, the quest for peace. And he's just like, oh,
I love it. I love
such a stupid
it's so oddly, I don't know why it's satisfying to me to hear the title
really
in
is.
a story.
You're in clear and present danger.
Okay, so chapter 8 begins the next morning after all of this happens.
Yeah.
News has got back to everybody about the monster, about the beast. We've since then dropped the term beastie. We haven't seen the term beastie in a while.
Yeah.
Is it just a beast now?
Little bit of a letdown there.
So would you say
the
that these
Beast.
kids are like Beastie Boys?
They're trying not to be Beastie
They're
Boys.
trying so hard.
No, that's definitely Jack's crew.
That's the
Yeah.
Jack Screw the Beastie
No
Boys.
sleep till Britain.
Jack and the Beastie Boys coming to your city, your island. So chaos is happening right now because they have called a meeting. They're telling everybody what's happening about the beast that they've found. There are eyewitness accounts now, so this isn't just, and it's not just one person. There's a lot of people, and it's not just one person that like dies in the next 12 hours.
Yeah.
Because the Splotch kid was all like the Weinstein
Man, the
boy.
beastie got to him.
It was the first one to make a claim that he had seen a beast, and then he just immediately gets roasted. So no one has any time to
It really stoked the fires of that situation by burning that kid alive on accident.
Yeah.
It's just like it was the perfect recipe for all these kids to really start having this irrational fear.
Oh yeah, like I mean, yeah, like the one person who had like an account of the beastie is now gone. Like, and no one but probably Ralph and Piggy, maybe Simon, has the sense about them to realize that he was burnt alive and not like devoured by the beast.
Yeah.
So
And so this is where Jack really tries to take control of
Is that where he leaves?
He-
Is chapter 8?
Yeah, this is when he like calls the meeting with the Conch and
The conch?
the Conch or the
or the coochie.
Yeah. So he calls the meeting, and almost immediately he's calling Ralph a coward and saying that he stayed back while Jack and Roger were the ones that went to check out the beast. And Ralph's like, well, I went after y'all.
I went later.
And he's like, yeah, after. And anyway, Ralph is like, yeah, and then we all ran away, so you can't call me a coward.
Right, and he gets super upset by that,
Yeah.
and he decides to try and he goes all in. He puts his chips all on the table and decides to make people make a choice.
Something else that's addressed by Piggy at some point, he does say that Ralph is the only thing between him and Jack.
Yeah.
That if anything happens to Ralph, then Jack
he's gone.
He says, what's
going to
happen to me? Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't say he's going to kill me, but
He's scared
he
about
knows,
what
like,
will happen.
his circumstances are going to be pretty dire if anything happens to Ralph, and I feel like that is some foreshadowing going on.
Yeah. So he tries to make a decision.
I don't remember what chapter that's addressed in exactly.
I think it's 8.
It's 8.
Is it 8?
It's
Okay.
8. Piggy brings that up to them, and it's shortly after this whole meeting event, and Jack gets really upset because Ralph is able to defend himself and justify his actions in a way that doesn't really make Jack look good at all. His face goes really red, and he tries to propose a decision to everybody. Who wants Ralph to be chief?
Yeah, he says
Who,
it and
who doesn't want Ralph to be chief?
No one raises their hand.
Yeah, no
right?
one reacts.
And
not
so
even
he
his...
starts crying
Mhm.
from embarrassment, and he just runs off.
Yeah, it says a
into, like,
tear
the
falls
woods.
from each corner of his eye.
So
And
that actually happens in chapter 5.
That happens in chapter 5?
When Piggy
Yeah, because
addresses.
it's at the very end,
Oh,
and
when
it's
Piggy
when
addresses.
Jack and some of the others are walking away
That's
from the
what I
meeting.
thought.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
They
I'm
say if
pretty
I
sure it
don't-
happened
okay,
earlier
If I
on.
don't blow the conch, or if I blow the conch and they don't come back, then I've already lost my leadership ability.
Right. So he doesn't want to risk
if
it.
I don't blow the conch at all, then
Then
I'm
he's
being a
like-
coward.
Exactly.
basically.
Yeah.
And that's when Piggy says, like, you need to be the leader because what will happen to me?
Right.
Sort of like a self-preservation thing
Mhm.
comes in.
Chapter 8 is also where they decide that they can't keep the fire going on top of the mountain anymore
Yeah.
because the thing is up there, the beast is up there. So they go with like setting it down next to the bathing pool or where all the kids kind
Yeah, a
of live.
brilliant one of Piggy's many brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
The simpler the better, I think it says.
Man, in one of the chapters, I was gonna say this earlier, but I forgot about it. I really liked when Ralph was talking about how smart Piggy is, and he's like, man, he's really smart for being fat. He's like talking about how smart he is, and then he just comes in with the
They have some
man, he's so
real,
fat.
some
Backhanded
real jabs.
insult.
Man,
Yeah.
they just have to make like a fat joke. They
Oh,
just
dude,
can't.
like I
Yeah.
don't know. Whenever Piggy, I think shortly in chapter 8, Piggy ends up with the Conch, and they give him some hard digs. They're like, "Shut up, fatty!"
Man,
And they're
every
like-
time he has the Conch.
They're like, "Shut up, you slug!" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
They called him a
slug, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys, just please be nice to Piggy." Like,
Oh my
is there
god,
not a
I know.
nice bone
He
in your-
tries so hard to be the voice of reason, and he just gets shut down every time.
Yeah, he did a bit of a better job this last time that he had the Conch, though. I mean, he seems to be progressing in his verbal abilities to communicate to the group of tribal children.
Yeah.
So-
I guess unfortunately he just rubbed Jack the wrong way
Mhm.
too early on, and so now anything he says is just automatically going to be dismissed or ignored.
Man, I feel like the only reason Jack even started hating him is because he's fat.
I think Jack takes a lot of his own insecurities out on Piggy. Like he
Oh, yeah.
sees him as the weakest amongst the group, so he just immediately diverts to him.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's an unconscious understanding that Jack may, and this might be reading into it too much psychologically, but I think there's an unconscious understanding that Jack has of his own intellect and understanding of the situations that go on.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, just like everybody is searching for control in their situations that they're put in, the one thing that Jack is capable of controlling and manipulating is his hunting sphere, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go out and hunt. That's why he's such an unbalanced character. And I think unconsciously he's very insecure about his intelligence in comparison to Piggy, and so I think that might have been the one thing that painted him as an enemy right off the bat,
I
which
think
was
he just has no respect for intelligent
right.
thought. Like,
Well, and because you
he
see,
just
But yeah,
'Cause he
low-
has
low
none of
respect
it.
for authority as well.
yeah, he doesn't have
Right.
the patience to
'Cause he doesn't
sit
have
around
any
and
of it.
listen when he could be out hunting.
right.
Like,
Whereas we see again that Ralph was like a balanced character in comparison to these three characters, because Ralph has the ability to identify that he's lacking a little bit in intelligence, and he's like, I'm not as smart as Piggy, right? And he like thinks that in his head when he's like talking about how he's like tired of this life kind of, and then he's sick of having to watch his feet.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just wish I could think like Piggy does. And he basically comes to the decision that maybe his intuition will serve him well enough, and that he won't have to be that smart. And so I don't know, I think his ability to identify that like consciously is gonna be good for Ralph in the long run, you know, whereas like Jack won't even consider the fact that he's dumber than Piggy, but that's why he hates him so much. I feel like part of why.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
guess there's a character named Bill in this story.
Man, who even is Bill?
I was just looking at some of these pages. and where's Bill and Roger? I don't know who Bill is. Also Maurice, I know the name, but I can't remember what Maurice does.
Maurice is like one of Jack's main goons. He has Roger like on his right, and then Maurice is like on the left, and they're like the goons that like
His
sit
henchmen.
back.
Are they the
and-
ones that go down to the beach to
Yeah.
steal the fire?
They're both of the ones that go whenever
Yeah.
he talks. He's like, "Hey, I'm having a feast. Come if you want to join my group, but
yeah, Sam
maybe
and
I
Eric-
won't even let you in." And then he's like, "Say it, guys!" And they're like, "The chief has spoken." And then they all like turn around and run off.
Say it, guys.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I guess Sam and Eric do stay behind though with Ralph whenever
they?
the group splits in half.
yeah, so and so we'll talk about when the group splits in half. So that meeting occurs And then once they conclude, basically whenever Jack tried to make everybody pick a side, no one did.
Yeah, no.
But
one picked
then
his side.
after, like, everyone, when people's going to bed and it's nighttime, they sneak away at night
Yeah.
and then go join Jack on the beach or wherever. And so that's when the actual split occurs.
Meanwhile,
And
Ralph is still trying to get like a head count of everybody and get names of who all.
yeah, which,
is
you know,
there.
a little late.
Yeah.
Probably should have done that right off the bat.
Considering the time jump, we're like months into this story and
he's
They
still
still
trying
don't
to figure
know.
out who
Just
is who.
now. He just now has the
I
bright
mean,
idea.
so are we. We don't
Yeah.
even know half the
Yeah.
characters. So
Yeah.
why should Ralph?
Yeah, it's very fitting.
Man, they need to do a head count right now because I need to know who these characters are.
Yeah. So what else happens? They start, Piggy and Ralph start talking about the deserters, and right about the time that they were like, hey, what about Jack and all the people who left? I think there's not as many people here as there was, you know, a couple hours ago. I wonder what that means. And boom, they get raided.
Yeah.
Pretty much how that scene happens. Jack decides, ooh, there was an important thing that happened before that though. The pig hunt.
I was going to say Simon wanders off first.
Yeah.
But he's not wandering off to join Jack. He's just going to his little meadow where he
Yeah,
likes
to
sit.
go be
He's
hiding
just
place.
hanging out.
It also says that he's like really thirsty, and I'm wondering if like
He's just not drinking anything.
his lack of hydration
Yeah.
kinda contributes to
Oh,
his
maybe.
crazy mindset towards the end of this chapter.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I missed the first time around, but if it's in there, that's
Yeah,
most
it's like
definitely.
he was thirsty. He was really thirsty.
Oh yeah,
Probably some sleep
he's like
deprivation
about to
as well.
die.
Yeah, because sleep deprivation, dehydration, I think that's a lot of what's contributing to Simon's battiness.
Presently, he was thirsty and then very thirsty, but he continued to sit. That's basically what it says.
Yeah, so he wanders off, and then Jack, whenever he divides with his people, they decide to go onto a boar hunt. They go and successfully kill a boar, and
They kill it.
they kill
Big
it
time.
good, like really good. So they chase it down, they stab it a few times in the rear end.
Man, they get it so many
They
times.
track it for a long time, don't they?
That's kind of a funny part of the story too.
Yeah, yeah,
The
that's
one
at the
kid is
end.
like really leaning into it, stabbing it with his spear, and then it's like revealed that he's stabbing it right up the butt. With his
Yeah.
spear.
Yeah.
And they're
Oh.
all like reenacting it later and having like they're all just like dying laughing about it.
Yeah,
because
like the
it's so funny to
description
them.
the description for that scene is pretty graphic, honestly. They stab it a lot,
Yeah.
and they lean into it like Ren was saying, like 5 inches it goes in.
Yeah, and then Jack like gleefully slits its throat.
He stabs it
and
a few
he's
times too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
With
like
his knife?
covered in blood, and he
starts
wipes the
wiping it on the
blood
other boys.
on his, like
Yeah.
whose face, Maurice or something.
Oh.
He's like ha ha ha, like putting it all over his face.
Oh gosh.
He
Yeah, he
is
slits
insane.
Jack slits the boar's throat. The blood gushes out and washes over his hands, and then he decides to wipe that on all of the other boys' face like this. So yeah, and then after that they reenact the whole thing, and then that's when they decide that they should have a whole tribal type ceremony, and they should try chanting and dancing around a fire.
Right up her ass. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what he says.
That's
Read,
what
read
they're
that. Read that. Is that what it says?
It just says like Roger began to withdraw his spear, and the boys noticed it for the first time. Robert stabilized the thing in a phrase that was received uproariously. Right up her ass. Did you hear? Did you hear what he said? Right up her ass. And then it says this time Robert and Maurice acted the two parts, and Maurice's acting of the pig's efforts to avoid the advancing spear was so funny that the boys cried with laughter.
There we go. Good. We have some very primitive theater going on now already.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like the author's like, okay, let me inject just a little bit of levity in this.
Yeah, I mean, and like it's hard for me too to even detect some of the humor in it too, because I'm just like so disturbed by what previously happened.
And it's funny too that that's the humor of it, is like this hilarious way that they brutally murder.
Yeah,
this
right.
animal.
To me, I didn't find the humor in it. I was just like, oh gosh, wow, okay.
It's definitely some black humor, if you could even call it
Yeah.
humor.
So all of that unfolds, and there was a bystander who watched it all unfold. That's Simon. Simon was just by happenstance watching all of this happen, and when they begin to propose the fact that they should hold a ceremony to dance around a fire and everything like that, and reenact again the killing of the boar in a more proper fashion with music and everything, it comes to Jack has this idea that maybe the beast will be satisfied if they give it an offering. So this is the first really archaic practice that like pops up with these kids, is the fact that they're now doing like blood sacrifices.
Yeah.
And
trying to appease the beast.
Exactly. Yeah.
The beast god of the island.
Exactly. It's really archaic stuff that, like, you know, later on, like the psychological significance to archaic practices, they like express universal truth. So like really ancient people decide that that we should do sacrifices because to prosper in the world, one needs to sacrifice, right? And that's how they express that dramatically through action, without being able to explicitly recognize that that's how you benefit in the world, is sacrifice. So they're doing it in a dramatic manner, and within like less than half a year, they're already there. Like they're already there to these super original, dramatic expressions of like universal truth. Is like, we got to kill something and sacrifice it to somebody,
Right.
and that'll make our position in the world better, you know.
Do you feel like this is at all a commentary on religion?
Could
Or
be.
like the author kind of like a negative viewpoint of that, or at least like how religious beliefs started with like people just kind of their own irrational fears, or like needing to explain things that they can't explain on the island, like the beast, and so they start sacrificing basically stuff to it, or like leaving stuff out for it.
Right. No, I think so too. Well, it's
themselves.
an interesting scenario that Golding created, because these are, like we've said in the last episode, they're very underdeveloped individuals.
Yeah.
So, you know, they didn't have much to start with in the first place, as far as like civility and, you know, socialization and different roots that they might have, because they're just children, especially the Littluns. And so,
can you bring the picture of Simon back up?
yeah, we'll bring Simon up real quick. So yeah, this is the scene that we're leading up to.
And what were you saying? You didn't really think it captured the mood?
Yeah, I think that in this scene that we're coming up to, so right after they talk about the chanting and stuff like that, they contemplate whether they should just reenact it and have somebody just pretend to be the pig, but they quickly decide, Jack decides, I think, that they need to use the actual pig. And so in order to give the sacrifice away, he saws off the head real quick and instructs one of his goons to go take a spear, sharpen it at both ends, and that they would give it over to the beast as an offering. And so that's exactly what they do. They take it, they shove the spear into a crack in the granite, and then he slides the pig's head neck first onto the spike. It goes through its neck and its mouth, and like some blood trickles down the spear, and they leave it there. Simon, watching all of this, becomes completely enraptured with this image, and with this what he's watched. It doesn't initially describe it as him being traumatized by the event necessarily, but most definitely hypnotized.
Oh yeah.
And it gives some very interesting imagery about Simon peering into the boar's white teeth that are turning black by the blood, and its eyes looking at him. And then I think toward the end of the chapter, this is where chapter 8 ends actually, is with Simon peering into the blackness of the boar's open mouth. and Simon somehow entering into it as an endless expanse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's tripping hard or something.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
He's, like,
And the
hallucinating.
most worrisome thing, too, that when all of this is happening is that the boar begins to speak to Simon with the voice of a school teacher. And,
and the boar is referred to as the Lord of the Flies.
yes.
Yeah, but
And
first,
Simon
whenever-
Simon creates this name for him because there are flies,
Yeah.
Buzzing all around. What does
all-
he say? Like it's loud, like a
like a chainsaw, basically.
yeah, something like
And
that.
the flies are without number. And
Whenever he first starts hearing it, though, doesn't he? It's just the voice was speaking to him, right? He just calls it the voice at first, like a disembodied thing talking to him, and then whenever he comes out of the trees, then he starts referring to it as the Lord of the Flies, right?
I have no idea. I don't know that it even specified. Like, I don't know if it specified any of that because it just says that it started talking and then it described it as a school teacher's voice.
Yeah.
And it keeps telling him to do stuff.
And
it
it's
tells
telling
him
him
that,
he's crazy.
yeah, and that he's
and
not
all-
welcome here and that he ought to leave. And
See, that's,
think
that's
he's-
where I wonder, like, if it's just part of his hallucination that it's this inner dialogue he's having with himself while looking at the pig's head, or if Jack and the other boys see him, and so they're speaking like from far away
I think they're definitely.
through
I
the
think
pig, and he's just
no,
sort
because
of
I think
believing
the
this.
language that the pig that the Lord of the Flies uses is too advanced
Yeah.
for the kids.
I
don't
think
think
he's
they would.
having
the whole-
a psychotic break.
the whole
that-
process is that the Lord of the Flies is telling him that he doesn't belong
Right.
with that group because
Yeah.
he's not as animalistic or
I thought he was saying that he doesn't belong on the island.
He calls him a silly little boy.
Yeah, I know he says that a lot.
he keeps telling him to go back,
Which was
with the
so
others.
creepy.
It says
Yeah.
like
That was creepy.
talking about the flies flying all over the pig head, and it says like it almost looks like it's grinning. And at last Simon gave up and looked back, saw the white teeth and dim eyes, the blood, and his gaze was held by that ancient, inescapable recognition. In Simon's right temple, a pulse began to beat on the brain. And yeah, eventually it cuts back to the kids talking about we got to keep the fire going, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Piggy and Ralph and sucks to your Asmar and all that.
Does the last page on chapter 8 discuss Simon's experience with the pig?
Yes,
I think it ends
it's
with him
the
like
last two
passing
pages.
out.
Yeah, it says you're a silly little boy, just a pig's head on a stick, and anyway, yeah, it says Simon found he was looking into a vast mouth. There was blackness within, a blackness that spread. Simon was inside the mouth, and he fell down and lost consciousness. So yeah, he's having a serious mental breakdown.
Ugh, yeah, he's not having a very good time right now. Simon, see, and so to go back to your question, that's why I feel this illustration didn't do that scene justice.
Yeah,
Definitely
Because-
doesn't.
like the sort of like sly grin that the pig seems to have there.
Yeah,
But yeah, aside from like the actual physical description of Simon,
I just feel
Not
like
a
his
lot.
facial expressions aren't correct for
Yeah.
what he was going
yeah, he
through
kinda
at that
looks more
time.
confused or
Yeah.
intrigued
Very
or,
inquisitive kind of look.
angry
Yeah.
maybe. But
Yeah.
really he's like terrified.
Yeah, I
and
feel like he
losing
would
his
just be
mind.
like almost like taken over, like he's not even there.
Yeah.
You know, eyes wide open, relaxed, you know, and like mouth slightly ajar maybe. A small detail that was missed, not to like tear this illustration apart.
Yeah,
but-
you're really ripping it to shreds.
Is that the mouth on the boar isn't open?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a huge thing because that's
Yeah.
how the whole chapter ends with him inside the mouth of the
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like Simon is transported to another realm, you know, taken taken into another realm.
The mushrooms really start to kick in.
Yeah.
We find
Little
out
Simon.
in
Man,
chapter
he thought
9.
they were normal. They were like,
That's what he was doing at his secret place, just going. And eating a
he's
bunch of
doing
shrooms.
mushrooms.
He was munching on some shrooms.
Yeah, he like thought they were normal, and he's like, man, these are great.
The snozberries taste like snozberries.
Oh gosh. So that, I mean, honestly, that was a really thrilling end to a chapter. I feel like one of the strongest endings for a chapter so far
Yeah.
is this like really existential like psychosis that Simon
Oh,
enters, whether it be from dehydration, sleep deprivation, or both. We're now entering into some like really creepy stuff, like almost like supernatural type things. We're not able to discern between like psychological problems or like supernatural stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's not going to be very good because the hunters are now have a taste for blood.
Yeah.
They successfully killed something. Now this isn't bugs, this isn't insects anymore. This is a very large being. The anatomical similarities between humans and pigs.
Which I guess they've killed one pig before this.
Yeah.
But this is certainly like a bigger kill.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
This is a much bigger kill. Like,
And
you
it's
know,
not just like
The first one is more out of necessity, and this one is
this
just
one's more just
kind of a gloating.
oh
thing.
yeah. And like the way that they killed the first one too was like bludgeoning mostly. And they like disabled it with the spears and stuff, which was pretty gruesome. But this one is like where Jack gets in close and dirty and like slits its throat and like takes joy in its blood.
And Bill's there.
Oh, and Bill is there.
Yeah.
We should
Robert,
just be in there.
our good
Who
friend
the hell
Robert.
Who the hell is Bill? We don't know who Bill
Don't
is.
know who either is. But where do you guys think that the book is going to go or end with? Because none of you guys have read it, right?
No, I've read
No,
it.
I've never
You've
read
read it, so you know. Where do you guys think it's gonna go?
Make your prediction, Rin. What's up? What do you feel?
How do you think it's gonna end?
I don't think there's going to be any rescue. I think if there is, then it'll be like a situation where these kids are suddenly faced with the reality of what they've become.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice. But I think good kids are going to die, bad kids are going to take over, and just like everything's going to go to shit, basically. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
I think evil will triumph.
Yeah. I think it's a very like harsh look at what like humanity's darkest side. That's kind of what the book centers on. So I think any sort of happy ending would be out of place, definitely.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Maverick?
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be evil winning, but nature maybe. Or maybe nature giving the upper hand to evil.
Mankind's
is a better way to put it.
Primal instincts.
Yeah.
And that, like, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or a necessary
Well,
thing,
see, that's a
or
hard
what,
thing to
right?
discern between, too, is like, are these primal instincts evil or are they natural? Or are they both? Are they naturally evil?
Are people naturally evil? I think these are the questions that the book kind of makes you ask yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think, I mean, me personally, I do feel like, I feel like people are inherently evil. I think that's something that you have to, because I think nature is evil, in our conscious way, right? Because we're humans are the only beings that have the ability to act contrary to their nature.
Yeah.
And that's the separating point between us as humans and other creatures like animals, is that we have these desires, but we're not forced to act according to them.
Yeah.
And so I think that is just one of the things that we get to see, like who's going to hold out longest, like which of the kids are gonna maintain the shreds of their civility, and which children are going to continue to act in line with their natures. And that's pretty much what I would. And I feel like it's not even like, I feel like a better definition of evil is like inflicting pain and suffering for its own sake. You know, like it's not even needed. it's just extra. It's like you don't need to torture Piggy, but we're gonna do it anyways.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like actively evil thoughts that these kids are having so much as like they're just letting go of intelligent thought and just giving in to their base instincts.
Right. Yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily all evil. If I had to make a prediction about what is going to happen for the rest of the story, you could use like really cliche stuff, is that it's all going to build to a head. Everything's going to start climaxing. I think someone is going to die
Who do you
that
think
we
it's gonna
care
be?
about, that will mark the climax of the story, and like or maybe not the climax, but like the beginning of the major rise of chaos and like battle, probably, because then I think at that point people will feel like they don't have much to lose, and so they'll start battling each other, and then maybe after the battle, like someone's gonna be terribly maimed. Maybe Ralph makes it out. He finally kills Jack.
I think Piggy's gonna die, and that will sort of like symbolize the death of reason amongst these kids.
Mm-hmm. And then Ralph will be on his own. He'll have to be,
and he'll either give in or
this is his test.
Or be left to like ponder what they've become.
Mm-hmm. He has no more assistance anymore. He has no voice of reason. He has to call upon his own voice now. And I think maybe there's a rescue. I think the whole climax is going to be a huge fight scene between Ralph and Jack. Ralph will narrowly win against Jack, and Jack's demise will be his own pride.
I hope someone parachutes down to rescue them, and right when they land, the kids are like, "Oh my God, we're being rescued!" And then an actual beast comes out of the water and just grabs the dude.
Hilarious.
It's real. It's actually real.
The beastie.
Well, not to have any spoilers, but that might happen.
Exactly what happens.
So I think that's what's going to happen, is that they're...
What do you think's going to happen to Bill?
I don't give a shit what's going to happen to Bill.
Man, I really hope Bill lives.
If the rescue does end up happening, do you think like they'll end up wanting it still, or will they be so attached to the island by that point?
That's what I was
Yeah,
kind
what
of
do you
wondering.
think?
Like, would Ralph or Jack even like accept rescue, or like hide or something? Maybe rescue shows up and the kids stay hidden because they've... It's kind of like when people go to islands and stuff where, you know, they've never had any contact with anybody, and
Right.
like, you know, most of the people will stay hidden because
I
fear of the unknown.
think they still have a baseline of like civil upraising, and so I think that it would be an interesting, like, I don't think this will happen, definitely not, but I think it would be an interesting like thought to give to the possibility of rescue coming, Jack pretty much killing everyone on the island, and like murdering Piggy, murdering Simon and Ralph and everybody that's not gonna be as like tribal as him.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like slitting their throats brutally, his hands like washed in their blood.
Do you think he'll sit on the Iron Throne at the end?
That's what I'm saying. He's gonna collect all their Swiss Army knives.
If it's anything
My
like
God.
the show, it's gonna be Bill that sits on the Iron Throne at the end.
Yeah, and then they're gonna burn it down.
I'd
They're gonna
like-
say,
I would
he
think
had a
it'd
When you
great
play the
story.
Lord of the Flies.
Bill was... Who has a better story than Bill? Bill the Broken.
Yeah.
Bill the Broken, screw Bill.
They like
screw
banish Ralph. They're like, get out of here.
Bram. So I'd love for that to happen. It'd be interesting for that to happen, and then rescue come. And I'd just like to see like what Jack's face would look like when he realizes that he put all of his eggs in one basket, that he decided that he was going to go all in with this, and it doesn't matter because we're never going to be saved.
Yeah.
I could murder people, you know. And then the rescue comes, and he just has to face, as a human, because that's what he is, what he's done.
I hope it ends with Jack getting a spanking from some adults.
They break out the wooden paddle and just go to
Spankings.
town.
Yeah.
It's like,
On his
no, mommy,
rump.
as he's covered with blood.
What terrible endings. Those are awful ideas.
No, these are the best endings.
Maybe they all just get rescued. No one dies. It's all going to be peachy cream.
Sure.
Who
Hey,
knows?
if you don't like it, we'll just write our own ending.
Yeah.
Just fanfic. And then Simon woke up and all those other chapters were actually just a dream, and here's what really happened.
Listen, if the viewers watching have any knowledge of fan fiction for this show, we might extend and do a small portion about the fan fiction. I don't think we can do the fan fiction. I take it back. Don't do that. Don't send them. Don't waste your time because we're not gonna read them. We're not gonna read them because I just realized that fan fiction is like erotic, right?
Yeah, they make like
So-
pure fan fiction with
Not all the
Ralph.
time.
Yeah, I think most fan fiction is not.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, okay. I thought most fan fiction was erotic. Maybe
I
that's
thought
just all we see.
I think that's
Well,
just
'cause
like the most prominent that people talk about.
50 Shades of Grey was fan
Twilight
fiction for
fan
Twilight.
fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Pretty crazy.
The
But that's Twilight. Like, what kind of fan fiction are you gonna get with that?
right because
series?
it's just a triangle romance.
Man, really serious fan fiction about like him meeting her parents
Oh
and
my
then.
One thing I was thinking about though, like with all this talk of pigs and stuff, it makes me think of like George Orwell's Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how like at the end of that story, the pigs kind of team up with the people and they say something like, spoiler alert, like the other animals are looking from the pigs to the humans and back, and they can't tell the difference between
Yeah,
Right.
because the pigs eventually start walking on their hind
So you think it's the
legs.
reverse?
I think it's going to be something sort of like that, where like Jack and them have just become animals. Like they're no better than like the creatures that they're slaughtering on this island.
Mm.
They're worse, probably.
Yeah, they're worse because they make the decision, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, they could just not do it, but they did it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be good too. George Orwell, that's another good opportunity for
We need
For
to do
book-
that.
Another
Book
depressing
options.
read.
yeah, honestly,
Well,
like
I just spoiled Animal Farm, so we should do like.
oh no,
1984.
we
Animal
can
Farm.
still read Animal Farm. I
Doesn't
love
matter.
that book.
I didn't like it in high school, but
Get out
I'm
of
definitely
here.
willing to give that one another try.
Animal Farm in 1984, amazing.
I think it's like the reason so many people look back on a lot of these books that we had to read in high school and like hated them is because it's your first real like everything that you consume, all the media and stuff before that is like Disney, and everything has a happy ending and it's exactly what you want for the most part, or you're watching Power Rangers or you know whatever cartoon. And so it's like the first bit of like showing someone that stories are more than just that. Like some stories, the purpose of it is that it doesn't have a happy ending, and it's like exactly what you don't want to happen to these characters, but that's like it drives home the point. And that's something that high schoolers, when you're forced to like confront that, you're just like, no, I don't like this. I don't like that these kids aren't teaming up together and making it off this island.
Yeah, well, that's like one of the big problems too in school at the moment is that they're even taking on like that high schooler mentality, which is that we don't want to put books in school that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so like there's even some people right now that are trying to get
Fan fiction.
To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, they're trying to take To Kill a Mockingbird out of classrooms and replace it with fan fiction.
It's like real
That
fanfic
courtroom
version
scene,
of it.
the courtroom scene was wild.
Turns out that what's his name?
It
Tom
really did.
Robinson like takes off his shirt in the courtroom and he's like, "What's up, guys?" And they're like, "Oh my god,
Stabs.
he's innocent."
What's the main guy's name?
Atticus.
Atticus
Yeah.
Finch.
It turns out he was actually really racist. And I think that's kind of what Go Set a Watchman is, where his daughter starts dating a black man and he has like real problems with it, like at least internally. From what I've never read it. I've never read either book. I've seen the movie for To Kill a Mockingbird. My brother loved the book, and then when Go Set a Watchman came out, he read that one and was like, this is such a disgrace to the legacy of the other book. And a lot of people think that it was what's her name, who wrote it,
Harper Lee.
Harper Lee.
Oh
that's
yeah,
right.
Harper Lee.
I think a lot of people believe that her editor played a huge role in the first book and how the story progresses and everything, and that she should almost, or the editor should almost get like a credit with the author, and that Go Set a Watchman is just the author trying to continue the story herself. And I think she said she didn't ever publish any other books and didn't want that one published.
Right, yeah.
And they ended up after she died, or when she was
posthumously producing it,
or old and senile.
Yeah.
They I think I don't think she was quite dead yet, but
Not quite dead yet.
that's so crude.
Not quite.
I'm not dead yet.
She's just hanging out in hospice.
Yeah, I think it was something like that where they're taking her hand and signing stuff off in her name.
Gosh.
Wasn't it
But he hated the story. My brother did, and just there's so much in it that Atticus is this Christ-like figure in the first book, almost just a totally pure person. In the second one, it's here are all of his faults and how he's actually kind of a trash dude.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good too, though, because that's kind of that reminds me a lot of the biblical stories, which is if you dig into any of the biblical stories, you realize that there's a lot of individuals. Most of the Bible is just individual people, and then you get to see them. You're oh yeah, Noah, Abraham is the father of nations. He's one of the best, grandest characters in the whole shebang, and then he has all of these blemishes. He's done all of these terrible things. There's coyotes outside. He's done these terrible things, that he certain people murder people. David was one. He's the guy who walked with God. He's this perfect character, and then he
had an affair.
Calls him a man after his own heart.
Right, and then he looks out on his balcony and sees this chick laying out sunbathing naked and is yo, hot, and was talk to his secretary. It was hey, listen, you see that hottie out there? She's mine. Stat. Find out who she is. And then he gets her in, brings her in for dinner, and ends up stealing her away. Yeah. And kills her husband effectively. And that's terrible, but he's still a man after God's own heart. So I think that's what Atticus is if, and I haven't read the book, I'm making projections here. This is all, but I feel that would be it, is that even you can do great things in the world and then still have an imperfect record.
But Atticus in To Kill a Mockingbird is not racist or anything. And
I think it's more it goes against the way the character is previously established. It contradicts the story.
Which would be bad.
To a degree where people are this is not
You're
good.
that's
This
not
is
the character, though.
This is terrible fan fiction.
Yeah,
Bring it full circle.
Terrible fan fiction. That's what it is.
Bad fan fiction.
So we got a lot of different options. Be sure, if you're watching this, to tell us what books we should read. We have 2 more episodes left here with Lord of the Flies. Next week we will be covering chapters 9 through 12.
The rest.
The last third of the book.
The last third of the book, and then we will decide whether or not we're gonna have everybody watch. If you guys could, it's on YouTube. There are 2 movies. There is one that was in the 60s, I think 62, and then there is a 90s, I think in 90.
I'll probably watch both of them.
Edition of. Yeah, I'll probably watch both of them.
I
might even watch. I think I might by myself watch the 62 movie on the stream, because I'm gonna check on its copyrights and see if the copyrights are gone.
If they're not copyrighted, we can just watch it on the stream. And
We could
have
we could,
a mystery science theater.
Yeah, we could all. We could all.
I'll be
the whole
Tom
time.
Servo.
I'll try and figure it out. What's up, Ironic Iconic? How you doing, bro? So we'll try and figure it out. Oops. We'll try and figure what we're gonna do out. Be sure to tell us what books we should be reading next. As far, I feel and we'll check with everybody. You guys feel we should continue on with classics? Because I feel that's a good idea.
I feel some classics. Let's not do The Grapes of Wrath because I want to kill myself with that
No,
book.
I think maybe we should. I don't know. There's some
The
really.
Catcher in the
do,
Rye.
Call of the Wild.
That's
since
a
the movie's
good
coming out.
book. What?
Yeah, we could do Call
East
of the
of
Wild.
Eden.
I haven't read that.
Huh?
And there's a movie adaptation.
Great
of that, East of
Gatsby.
Eden.
East of Eden.
I've heard that is like everybody that I know that's read that has said it's like an
Maverick,
incredible
Yeah.
we
book.
could read The Great Gatsby because that's a great book and a great movie.
Listen, dude, we
I think
could-
it would be good
Which
to do
movie
it.
we're talking?
Yeah, there's a
the
couple.
one with Leo.
Leo or Robert Redford?
Ironic
No,
says
not-
we should
no.
read Insomnia by Stephen King. We could read some Stephen King. They're long though.
Oh, what's the one
they're really
about
long.
the JFK assassination?
1960.
It's like 11:23.
62.
There's a lot of
62.
books
Yeah.
about that.
Wait, six-
There's a lot of
11/22,
books and
63.
movies.
Apparently, that's a really good book.
I've watched
Yeah.
the show.
we
Is it
uh
Yeah. It's
we
really
could do. You know what was a really good book, and it's super short. We could probably do it. Oh no, we would. It's so good. But The Adventures of Pinocchio, like the original
I've read
book.
it.
You've read it?
Mhm.
It's so good, isn't it?
It's bonkers.
It's really
That's what I will
crazy.
say.
It's
Like suspense of belief
bonkers.
has to be there. If you
Yeah,
don't,
it's,
if you,
it's nuts.
oh yeah, like it's a roller coaster. Like it's so
I don't know
freaking
what
good
to
though.
expect.
Like imagine the scene where the kids turn into donkeys in the movie, the cartoon. How like just
Man, I haven't
scarring
seen that
and
movie
crazy
in
that
a
is when
while.
you're a kid. And that's the whole book though. It's just like
Crazy
one
stuff
weird,
happening
crazy thing after another.
nonstop. I think that would be a good one too.
Maybe
It's
we should all like pick a different book or something.
Yeah.
And put it all in a hat or something.
Yeah,
like that
we'll
and
all-
just pick it random.
there we go. We'll go to how about this? We'll all pick a classic. Has to be
Okay.
classic.
One each or like
Yeah, one
three
each. Maybe we can
or,
do
like,
three
have a
each,
whole
yeah,
thing?
sure.
I
We
don't
do
know.
3 each.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We'll have some good variation. We'll all do three each, and we'll even get people that want to put in. So, ironic, iconic. If you want to put in for a classical book that's considered classic. So, what's the
Yeah.
criteria for classic?
I don't know.
Published before a certain date.
I'm
No,
not
because
sure.
I feel like that's subjective. Because I feel like new books can become classics.
Yeah.
Right, but they need certain time. Okay, so a classic book, according to Wikipedia, is a book accepted as being exemplary or noteworthy. For example, through an imprimatur, such as being listed in a list of great books, or through a reader's personal opinion.
I think another criteria that we should aim for should be something about this length where we can cover it in so many episodes and
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
like, with
We're not
them.
gonna read
It
like
has
a
a-
Stephen King novel
Yeah,
that's that
sorry.
Yeah, I
thick.
don't want to
I'm
do.
not doing it.
Yeah, we can't do
Oh
big.
my god, that
big
book is
giant
so-
books. I mean, eventually, if we continue long enough with this same group, I feel like if we wanted to, we could try and tackle larger books.
Yeah.
But we would definitely have to condense things. We wouldn't be able to cover anything as extensively as we've done with this.
Yeah, chapter by chapter. We
Yeah.
have to go like, here's an overview of what we just read.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I do think next week when we do sort of a summary leading up to where we're at, we should do like a bare bones summary, not like chapter by chapter, really. but
Yeah,
just,
and
like-
I'll probably have that written out too, and have better notes for next week.
Yeah.
About all the chapters, and I'll make chapter summarizations a lot easier for next week. So we'll be better prepared. But yeah, so put out those comments for classical books. Suggest as many as you want, as long as they're not super long. Check out the page count. We'll probably keep it to like 200 pages. Two to three. Can we push to three?
We'll just see like how long.
We'll
the
see what
book
it is, and
Depends
we'll
on the book.
Yeah, we'll check it out for you. Don't even.
Don't
you know.
even worry about it.
So.
Don't even worry.
So yeah, we'll do that. 3 suggestions or so. Put them all into a hat, shake them up, and then pull them out.
Cool.
And then we'll do that. We'll
We can
do
make
the
sure that
actual
we're not
drawing.
picking the same
We'll
books.
draw on stream
Should
our
we-
last episode
Yeah, I was going to say, should we do the drawing
live.
last episode?
We'll do it
That makes
live.
sense. So next episode we can reiterate to people like, hey, give us suggestions and we'll totally
Yeah.
throw them in.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be great. And I like this planning period toward the end of the streams. I like this. It works great. So everyone's
Yeah.
included on how we're doing it. We're exploring things, making choices, taking risks, and progressing as a book club. Book club, man. You guys ever think you'd be in a book club?
No.
Yes.
No?
Everybody I've mentioned it to, they're like, boy, you're sure getting into your 30s, aren't you? Like, I guess so. You know,
Maverick, I literally.
So you're in a
thought
book
if I
club
was-
now, huh?
you're in a knitting club too.
I always thought if I was ever gonna be in a book club, it would be with you.
Hell yeah, dude! I'm so glad I can
I
be
was
that.
like in
I can
8th
be that friend
grade.
for you.
I was like, that could be cool to have a book club. I'd put Maverick in it.
I just never thought I'd be in one, but this is great. I like it.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine
that,
if you're like, I hate this.
I wonder if Riley will be back next week.
yeah, she'll be back
Probably.
next week. We'll probably have to put Riley back in because she started with us.
Yeah.
But we appreciate
Get
you,
outta
Alexander,
Yeah,
for
course.
coming in.
Glad to be in front of the camera this time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was our technician last week. So, yeah, we'll be doing all that stuff. We have some cool different ideas. We'll be adding stuff to the stream every week to try and make it better for everybody. And next week we'll be doing the rest of the chapters. I don't know. We'll try. We might be able to fit. Do you think that we'll have to take an entire episode to the movie versus book comparison?
I think
I
if
think
we
so.
Yeah.
watch
can make
the
it.
I think
movie
4
on the
episodes is
stream.
pretty solid. for
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
book.
That's a good round number. Good
Yeah.
even number.
Yes.
Right.
I know this is like extremely too late, but I hope it could everybody hear me all right?
Yeah, I feel like
noticed,
it'll be fine.
Looking at the screen, my mic is a lot farther away from my face than everybody else's.
Yeah, we'll do that, and I'm making notes of that too, like different things. They should be able to hear you just fine.
Okay. I was trying to lean back a little bit too, so that I don't look like I'm so much closer to the camera.
Yeah, and if anybody's ever worried about that, like the position, I don't know, you can just try and fix it. We'll go through that next time during our hour standby at 7,
all right,
and try and go through that.
I'll address it much sooner.
Yeah. No one said anything about it, so I doubt it was an issue. We
Okay,
had a bunch
cool.
of people in chat, and no one said anything about it. So, yeah, make those book suggestions. You may see at the top of the screen the different notification bar. If you want to make a donation to us, I'm figuring all that out. Currently, we only accept donations via bits on Twitch, but I'm going to try and get some other kind of donation system set up so that you guys can, if you want, send some money our way so we can afford to purchase new books, because some of these books that we will be doing may or may not be expensive. So it costs a lot to buy these books. It's like one book times 4 at least. So we gotta round that off and situate it. But we had a great turnout today. I feel like we had a good amount. We had like a max of like 12 people in the chat at one point.
Oh,
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. And I think we've had like 15 total unique chatters. So we're doing great, and I hope people are enjoying it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're working on this. So how are you guys feeling about it? This is your second time. You think it's rolling along?
Yeah.
You think it's going good? Is there anything we need to change about it? You have any inputs? You think we can do better? Anything I can do better, Ren?
I mean, I just kind of consider this like our trial run.
Yeah.
Figuring out what works and what doesn't. I do think there are times where we kind of get carried away, like a little repetitive, or just take too long to summarize stuff.
Right, or we
whatever.
jump back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
And
we
I
could
think that'll
do
be
better with that.
rectified next week when I will keep us on track, because I know now what organizational notes I need to keep things moving in a good fashion, because beforehand I wasn't sure about how we should go about the conversation, and I think now I know how to keep us on track, and how to take notes as I'm reading to supply that order when we're going about it. And I think I even did a better job last week, and I wanted to try and do a more free-form discussion, and it backfired on me a little bit. Just wasn't as good. Like for me, I felt a little lost because I didn't have as many notes. So
Yeah, I think I'll definitely try to take some notes.
yeah, and I didn't
next
want to
time.
put that on you guys. I didn't want to ask you to do notes.
Yeah,
'Cause,
sometimes notes. I've done podcasts in the past, and
Yeah.
sometimes that part of it can seem like such a chore
yeah.
when you're already the goal is to read the book, and sometimes that can seem like a little bit
Right.
of a chore. So it's yeah, I get it.
But if you feel like you want to do notes, feel free to do that. If you feel like you don't have time, don't worry, because I'll have them. And if anyone feels like it's a lull, I'll try and pick up the slack with the notes, and we should be fine. So don't feel pressured to have to do notes, but if you want to, that should help you put your individual point forward in a more concise manner.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, so this is the end of the fall book club, chapters 5 through 8. So what up? Thanks for coming, and we will see you guys in a second. I'm gonna have to run off screen to shut this off.
Oh, wow.
So
Can be waving the entire
Very
time.
professional.
yeah. So
Bye.
peace out, home dogs. Hope you enjoyed.
We all just
See you next
awkwardly-
week at 8 o'clock Central, Saturday. I don't know what day of the week that is. The 22nd?
I don't know.
I have no idea. Not the 22nd. I don't think that.
Wave.